Recently, I've been banging on about how amazing the M4 Mac Mini and the M4 Pro Mac Mini are, and they still are, that's still true. But from a mini computer perspective, is the Mac Mini the best value for money option out there? Even if you are already in the Apple ecosystem. Geekom, with their GT1 Mega here, may have a word or two to say about that, especially when it comes to a price to performance ratio perspective. I'm Alex and I do down to earth tech videos. We've done pretty much everything that there is to do to push the Mac Minis, and frankly, I loved almost everything about it. But we can't ignore that for a lot of people, there may be better options out there, not just from a budget perspective, but as we'll find out in a minute, from a performance perspective too. And rather than just showing you some benchmark specs and giving you an opinion-based review, I mean, I will do that too, because otherwise you may as well just watch a video made by AI. But I thought I'd put these mini beasts here side by side and run them through, some real tests to really push them both, or the three of them. Well, I actually went a little bit further here and included the M4 Pro in this comparison, which if you look at the specs, it's not going to be a like for like, but it might help you from a reference perspective. Plus, quite a few of you have asked me to put both Mac Minis against a Windows alternative, and that is exactly what we're doing today. Putting these three mini PCs head to head, the $600 M4 Mac Mini, the M4 Pro Mac Mini, also the base configuration at $1,399, and the Geekom GT1 Mega, which is coming in at the moment at $989. All the prices are launch prices, so make sure that you check your deals in your region, because I think you can get all of these devices a bit cheaper depending on when you're watching this video. We will be testing quite a few different things, from generic productivity to video editing in DaVinci Resolve, gaming. Yes, it is possible to game on a Mac, just about in some games, but in other games it's actually pretty decent. Photo editing in Lightroom, and we're also going to be doing some power consumption tests as well. And spoiler alert, the results might actually surprise you. The Mac Mini is known for its very sleek design and impressive performance with the latest M4 chips, right? I, for one, am a big fan of this machine. Quite possibly one of the best value for money Apple computer that not only that you can buy right now, but it was ever made, I think. But the Geekom GT1 Mega has entered the chat, as they say, as the kids say, with the 14th gen Intel Core Ultra 9 processor, Intel Arc graphics, and a price tag that is hundreds and hundreds of pounds less for similar specs, and at times, as you will see here today, better performance. Let's break down how these three machines stack up. Get it? Right, here's a quick spec rundown. While we look at the specs though, and before we move on, I want to be transparent with you. This video is being sponsored by Geekom. I know not many people disclose this stuff, but I like to do that. And as always, I'm committed to being fair and critical where it's needed. For instance, the fan noise on the Geekom is something that can't be ignored. I'm gonna say that straight away. And I will talk about that in a moment in more detail, but whether or not it's a worthy compromise, it will come down to how you see those things. But if you know this channel, ultimately you know that I won't hold back on highlighting any shortcomings on either side. And I'm not gonna say, trust me, I'm a tech reviewer, because I just think it's important to be transparent here. Yes, Geekom are paying for this video, but there are some issues with their product as well. Geekom had no say in the content itself, and that's how I prefer to work with all my partners here. If they don't like what I'm saying here, there simply is no deal. And the fact that you're watching this video means that they were okay even with my criticisms. I have already reviewed the GT1 Mega before the Mac Minis were released as well, so if you want to see even more detail about this machine, there's another video for that. But considering how mini PCs are becoming more and more popular, I think there's a lot of space for the Geekom in this mini PC arena. Whilst this Mac Mini lineup has impressive specs, right, the GT1 Mega, that price to performance ratio that I mentioned, is hard to beat. And one of the key things to pay attention here is the ludicrous memory upgrade and storage configuration, right? You get 32 gig and 2 terabyte SSD with the Geekom for $989 at launch. If you were to configure the Mac Mini to get that same spec, it would cost you $1,800. That is some serious cash difference, right? And you could be using that money towards other accessories like a 4K monitor, a better desk, a new chair. It's just a shame as well, I think, that Apple does this, because this PC, without any upgrades, is great value. But by adding storage and memory, it becomes overpriced quite quickly. There are some storage options that I can recommend, like, whichever mini PC you go with. I always mention those because I hate giving Apple more money for things that are, in my view, commodity items like storage and memory. Actually, just unplugging this from my MacBook, because this is what I use on a day-to-day basis to edit my videos. This is the Thunderbolt 5 enclosures from Acasis. Thunderbolt 5 cable, it's fast, sometimes faster. In some tests, I haven't done it myself, but some reviews, show that the speed on this is faster than the internal disk on the Mac Minis. So yeah, a great accessory. I've got 4 terabytes in there. That's plenty for doing these videos. Design-wise, all three have a clean, minimalist aesthetic, right? That would look great on any desk setup. The GT1 Mega has a very sleek and compact design. Not as compact as the Mac Mini, they're tiny, a tiny bit smaller. But in my view, the Geekom offers quite a bit more in terms of connectivity. I'm annoyed that we don't have at least 2 more USB-C ports on the Geekom. I really want to see more USB-C ports here. I love the fact that we have loads of USB-A, there are plenty of those. But in contrast, I'd love to see USB-A on the Mac Mini as well, because there will be the odd peripheral that doesn't have a USB-C. And I've been there with keyboards specifically. It's like, depending on the keyboard, you have to find an adapter. Anyway, it's not a major issue, but I think both sides could do with a review. But let's break down all the ports so you can see what I mean here. The M4 Mac Mini has 2 USB-C ports at the front, with support for USB 3 up to 10 gigs per second, and 3.5mm headphone jack as well. At the back, you've got 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, up to 40 gigs per second, supporting USB 4 and DisplayPort. It's got 1 HDMI, 1 gigabit Ethernet, which you can configure to 10 gigabit for an extra $100. The M4 Pro Mac Mini has pretty much all the same ports, but at the back, these 3 ports are Thunderbolt 5, which is fantastic for speed, and you can use these sort of accessories. Apple says that up to 120 gigs on this Thunderbolt 5 ports, but take it with a massive pinch of salt, because, or at least a small pinch of salt, because it's not just data in that 120, it includes display traffic. In terms of wireless, the Mac Minis have Wi-Fi 6E. Now, the Geekom has quite a few more ports. It has 6 USB-A ports, 5 USB 3.2 Type A ports at the front, and another USB 2.0 at the rear. Like me, you might be wondering, why not have more USB-C ports, right? Well, looking at the rear, we do have USB 4.0 ports as well, supporting up to 40 gig each, and DisplayPort 1.4 as well. So you can connect an external hub, like an Anchor that I'm using here, or a CalDigit, which is my favorite hub ever. But even without a hub, you could use multiple monitors, some of which might give you USB-C as well, almost giving you that hub functionality. In fact, the GT1 Mega supports up to 4 4K monitors to a max resolution of 8K. So really, you can really go crazy with this. It has 2 Ethernet ports at the back, out of the box, with 2.5 gigabit each, no additional $100 for that. It has a HDMI port and a 3.5mm headset jack as well. And when I say, the 2.5 gig Ethernet is not optional, it's a little bit of a dig at Apple. You can add a 10 gigabit Ethernet for $100, which would effectively be better than the Geekom option. But in my experience, to go to 10 gig is only going to be useful if you're using like a NAS or something like that. Not many things in today's world will utilize over gigabit Ethernet, right? Your home router might not even be able to cope with that, but 10 gig is better than 2.5 gig. And then we have all the extra stuff on the GT1 Mega, which is really cool, like a Kensington lock, and my favorite, an SD card slot, which this is such a great feature, especially for anyone working on graphic design, anyone who uses a camera and wants to move photos around and videos around. This alone is such a great feature, and I wish Apple had done it as well. They do have the tech, right? They've done it clearly on the Mac Studio machines, but yeah, not on the Mac Minis. And when it comes to Wi-Fi, the Geekom is also more advanced here with Wi-Fi 7. Again, similar argument for the 1 gig, right? There are loads of improvements in Wi-Fi 7, most importantly, the reduction in latency, not so much the speed, but it's 85% lower latency in relation to Wi-Fi 6. That's all well and good, but again, you're gonna need a Wi-Fi 7 router to see some of the other improvements. On paper, the Geekom offers a lot more flexibility here, but here's the thing. I haven't even mentioned the fact that you can upgrade this thing yourself, right? All you need is a tiny screwdriver. You can open, there's 4 screws at the back here, and you can remove the memory, remove the SSD, and upgrade them in future. Amazing. This is huge from a longevity perspective, because when you buy anything from Apple these days, right, you are stuck with a config for the rest. So they kind of force you to upgrade upfront, whereas with the Geekom and other options as well, you can start small and grow as you need it and as your budget allows. Specs and all these features are great, but how does it translate in practice? Let's put them side by side. To kick things off, we're going to start with Blender 3D rendering. I used a 750 meg render file. It's a hefty file if you don't know Blender. This is a pretty challenging scene that I've used before. I have links to the original file as well, so you can test it yourself and benchmark it on your machine to see maybe how slow or how fast your machine is currently. Maybe you don't need anything else, right? This is a pretty complex, high detailed model with grass, incredible lighting, and lots of fine detail. I've tested this render before with the Mac Mini, so I knew how good the Mac Mini is for this, but could the Geekom get anywhere near that?
And for this one, we're going to start on the Windows machine. There's a lot going on here, multiple cameras. I'm going to try and make sense of it all in the edit. But this is Blender, of course. We've got the stopwatch going on here. And I just want to show you that moving on the viewport is fine. There's no lags or anything like that. It behaves really, really well, both on the Mac and on this machine here. By the way, I'm not an expert in Blender. I'm just kind of learning as I go here, but I am told that grass specifically is one of those things that is really quite hard to render, which is why I picked this model, because it looks like there's quite a lot of detail in there. Let's go and render this. Okay, and that's a start. It's saying 1 hour 46, and this is the base model. Yeah, it's saying remaining 2 hours, which is about the same as what the Windows machine said. Whilst the GT1 and the M4 base model runs, we're going to start the M4 Pro as well. Cool, same document as you can see here. Again, let's move around a little bit here so you can see the performance. If you move too fast, you might see some drop frames or whatever, but very smooth. What we care about though is the rendering, so let's do render. And straight away, as expected, the M4 Pro is saying the remaining time to render this image is 1 hour 20. Again, I expect it, right? You're paying $1,400. You expect it to be better performing than the base model. What I would say though on this one is that the fan is already gone up to 2000. So somehow the M4 Pro seems to be more hungry when it comes to, the cooling. So I'm gonna try and record with the microphone to see if you can hear. It has definitely got louder before at 3000 RPM, but at 2300 is a very gentle hum, a little bit quieter than the GT1 for sure. But it's interesting to see that rendering the same image is actually making the M4 Pro sweat a little bit more, right? But again, it probably makes sense because it is a faster chip and it probably does get warmer. But it's good to see that the cooling on both machines is doing the job here.
For creatives, both Mac Minis show their strengths, but Geekom holds its own despite costing a lot less. So I think there's a good argument here that just because you're a creator doesn't mean that you should default to Macs in this case. Efficiency is key for mini PCs. I think the reason many people buy the mini PCs is because they are efficient. They are, they don't generate a lot of noise. They kind of stay cool as well. The Mac Mini, the M4 base, consumed around 25 to 30 watt average. I mean, the max is 30 watt. The M4 Pro, I did see go up to about 45 at one point when he was really going for it, but nothing more than that. So it's not quite a big trade-off in terms of more power, more performance, especially, seeing the Geekom, how it compares even with the M4 Pro, which is not really, from a price perspective, is nowhere near, right? It's kind of half the price. By the way, in this video, I'm kind of cutting out a lot of detail. So if you want to see a lot of behind the scenes and stuff, my Instagram has a lot of stories and reels that I put up there. So yeah, if you are on Instagram, come and see me as well. I share a lot of behind the scenes that I don't always share here. Next up, let's move to another crucial test, performance under demanding workloads. This is where we'll see, how well these machines cope with kind of resource intensive stuff like multitasking and productivity applications. I also just want to say a big thank you to all of you who suggested these tests as well. These videos wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be as interesting without your input. Much more to come anyway, but the mini PC comparisons have been some of the most popular on the channel over the past few months, and I've created a playlist here just for them as well. If you are enjoying this and you want to see more, make sure to subscribe too. And talking about stuff that you suggested, a lot of you suggested gaming between these PCs. It's pretty clear to me, but not as clear cut as it used to be. Apple is catching up in terms of gaming, but the reality is I can play my entire Steam library, which is not that big, but it has quite a few hefty games in there. I can play all of them on the Geekom without anything. All I have to do is download and play. With the Mac Mini, There's some hoops that you have to go through to play like Steam games in there. Some are supported natively, some aren't, but I can play all of those games, you know, without dropping frames or stutters in here. Of course, if you want to play competitively, that's obviously the graphic cards in here is not going to be a match for the 4090s or even the 5090s, of course. But in Apple's case, even Resident Evil 4, which Apple has now, you know, for over 2 years been using as an example of gaming prowess, even that game randomly crashed, you know, on the M4 Pro Mac Mini as well, which is weird. I mean, it could be just my machine, but you know, nothing crashed on the Geekom. I was able to play Cyberpunk on the Mac Mini before, so it is an amazing machine for gaming. If you want to do gaming, it is entirely possible. I'm not saying otherwise, but you are going to still have to use some sort of Windows, like a virtual machine or a container to game proper games on the Mac. The Geekom just blew the Macs away in this area because, you know, it's running, for example, here, the latest Call of Duty without any issues at all. I mean, the only issue here is skill issue. My aim is terrible. And now let's talk about video editing. It's not because I'm a tech creator. I actually don't like doing video editing tests, but it's a good example of something that, you know, takes a lot of time for rendering. Usually is something quite demanding. So kind of going past the cliche of video editing, I wanted to try DaVinci as well because it's supported on Windows and it would be like a fair comparison. Well, I don't use DaVinci, I use Final Cut Pro, which is only on Macs, but mainly I wanted to edit something that, you know, it's like 4K 60 video, lots of B-roll footage and some basic color grading as well. One of my viewers from Australia, Sudip, I hope I pronounced it right, left an interesting comment here asking if the Mac Mini, the base model, could handle a fairly standard workflow in DaVinci, you know, like a 10 to 20 minute video. He wanted a 1080p video. I went further and added 4K, but he wanted basic stuff like, you know, 2 camera setups, color correction, and some effects. So I think this is going to be useful for him as well. The Pro is the clear choice for video professionals, you know, on Mac OS. 12 minutes, which is 3 minutes faster than the Geekom. But the Geekom, it's a solid contender still, right? Here, especially for those who prefer or need that Windows compatibility. If you are, you know, starting with gaming and maybe you're starting to think about streaming, you know, Windows is going to be friendlier for that because the games just work without any virtual machines and things like that. And another popular request is Lightroom, you know, to see how these machines handle a realistic photo editing scenario. It's a very basic test here. You know, I imported and batch edited 500 raw images and exported them all to JPEG. So the workflow is very similar to what I would do, for example, for thumbnails, not 500, maybe 30 to 50. But I know a lot of you go even up to 1,000, 1,500 images at a time, right? The import is kind of a, you know, it's too quick to matter in a test, I'm finding. But making a change to a raw image and then trying to apply that change to 500 images is a better way to test performance. So that's what I did here. All the Lightroom settings are the same across the board. And I used the same 500 images, 503 to be precise.
Okay, so that was 2 minutes slower on the M4 base model to just paste some edit settings across 500 images. Let's see how long it takes to export those images now to just a local disk. So 3 minutes 38 to finish the M4 base model. Let's see about the others. This one is getting me a little bit confused because it's nearly 9 minutes. It's going to be about 10 minutes by the time it's done. The export on the base model M4 took just over 3 minutes. It was still slower than the Geekom, but this is too, I mean, I've run this now 3 times and I'm still not getting any improvement. The disk is, you know, it's busy, but it's not completely full, but it took 10 minutes. You know, this Mac isn't really that old, and yes, I've done some stress testing on it, but nothing that you wouldn't do it on a normal day-to-day usage. So the fact is, the GT1 Mega just performed a lot faster in this test. As I said at the beginning of the video, noise, the fan noise specifically, is something that we don't talk about enough in reviews, but it does matter, especially, you know, for quiet work environments. As I said a moment ago, when you're gaming and listening to music whilst working or something like that, this is not going to be an issue. But every now and then, you know, if you're in a quiet space, you will hear the fan go under load, right? The Mac Mini M4 base model can get hot, especially when you get to like 3000 RPM on the fan, but it's barely like a gentle hum, really. You don't hear a lot of noise at all. The Geekom is noticeably louder, under heavy load, of course, but it does do a great job at keeping the system cool, which is, you know, is one of those things. Maybe you can mount this behind a monitor or mount this under the desk for, you know, so you don't get too bothered by it. But yeah, for raw performance, the Geekom's cooling
is effective, but slightly noisier. So which one should you choose? You know, if you're deep in the Apple ecosystem, the Mac Minis are fantastic. The base model offers great value as far as Apple goes for things like lighter tasks, whilst the M4 Pro Mac Mini, for $1,400 though, is perfect for power users who really need that extra juice in graphics and CPU performance. But the Geekom GT1 Mega impressed me the most for its price to performance ratio, upgradability, which is such a, like, I can't stress how good that is to be able to open it and kind of upgrade it. And obviously for gaming performance, there's a clear winner here. Links to all the products down below, QR codes are here. Let me know which one you'd pick in the comments, and also leave any questions as well you might have. You know, I'm always up for interacting with you here in this channel. I hope to see you soon. Cheers.